You call yourself the flick pick?
Oh, okay. Not for this first Superman movie. Even as a kid, I never even liked him.
Yeah. Anyway, so main topic of the day, which we'll probably spend less time on, honestly, than that, is the fact that, obviously movies have been shut down for a long time. John and I have both debated, the reopening process, the mask, and all that kind of stuff. But now there seems to be some light at the end of the tunnel in a new deal that has been reached by Universal and AMC. And so the deal as we know it now is that AMC and Universal are working together, and any Universal film or film owned by Universal that gets a theatrical release after 17 days, so 3 weeks in theaters, will be eligible to also go onto video on demand. Now remember, AMC at one point was on the side of Regal and Cinemark in saying, we're not showing any Universal movies if they want to show and release their films on PVOD on the same day of release. That's not going to happen. But now AMC has somehow turned its tune and has changed its tune and has now actually made a direct deal with Universal. So only AMC and Universal are involved. So this only deals with AMC theaters and only deals with Universal-owned movies that are going to get a theatrical release. And we don't know all the details of what AMC gets out of it, except that apparently they do get a cut of the PVOD sales. And the number that's been thrown around a lot in most of the stories that I've read has been around 10% of the sales. And so with that knowledge, right, with the limited knowledge that we have and what you know and maybe have heard, or if this is the first time, do you think that, one, this is a good idea, and two, that this could potentially save, at the very least, AMC, and if more theaters and more studios make deals like this, potentially theaters in general?
And go.
Yes.
Yeah, I've always been of the mindset that theaters need studios more than studios need theaters. I think when it comes to putting a film out, if this was 1995, yeah, you need a movie theater. But right now, no, you kind of don't. I mean, sure, your returns might be less, right?
Yeah.
Only due to piracy. But it's at a point where I think the theaters needed to start negotiating deals like this. This is how everyone's going to be more successful, especially right now.
Yeah.
You need to have that VOD option. You truly have to have it, or else there's a large portion of viewers who are simply just not going to go to the theater, but they will pay to watch the movie at home. And then there's another category of people who will go to the theater.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the best of both worlds. And I don't know why more studios and more theater chains aren't making deals like this.
Yeah.
It goes to the theater, it makes its money. The people who are going to pay to go see a theater experience or a movie are going to go in those first 3 weeks. So you're going to get all of your money you need from those people. And then everyone who wanted to stay at home and wait are going to pay and watch it at home. So I think it's the best of both worlds, but I don't agree that a studio who created the film, produced the film, put it all together, paid for the film, should give away 10% to a theater who just wanted to have a longer runtime of the film in their theater. I if I was the studio, I wouldn't want to give away 10% of that to them for nothing.
Yeah.
I would say you got your 3 weeks. That's good enough. If people still want to go, they'll come.
Yeah.
That's my biggest complaint with it. Yeah.
Okay, and I think the mindset though is this: like, you really have to break down numbers here, because first 2 weeks of any movie showing, the old deal, and this is the other thing too, where I would love to find out if this has changed. But when a movie gets released, so like if Tenet actually gets released, the first weekend of September, we're all holding our breath on that one. Studios normally in a typical year would get 90% of the box office from the first 2 weeks of its release. And then every week after that, they get less. And so by the end of the run, you see around a 60-40 split. So studios get 60%, the theaters themselves get about 40% of the movies. And so I think the reason why this actually, that 10% really isn't, in fact, I think Universal's getting away with a pretty good deal, is because assuming they're still getting the first 2 weeks at 90% and the third week at maybe, 80 or 70%. Again, we don't really have a lot of knowledge about what it is, percentage wise, because I think every contract and every movie has a different deal. Yeah. But assuming that it's not a huge drop off, you're looking at, again, as you said, a lot of people, a huge portion of people, especially now after COVID and quarantine, that are willing to wait 3 weeks to access it on PVOD. Them giving AMC 10% to allow that to happen is actually a really big deal, because one, AMC is the largest theater chain in the United States, in the world even, and also they are still reaping the benefits of those first 3 weeks in theaters, where we know, at least right now, the biggest place of money, or the best way for any studio to make money, is to have a box office release. And in order to get a box office release, you need to have theaters to open to. And if your theaters are not going to play ball with your plans for VOD, you need to have deals with them in order for that to happen. So, as you said, there seems to be a best of both worlds scenarios here. But honestly, I think that Universal is actually getting away with a steal here, because only giving 10% or so when they're still reaping the massive profits of the first couple weekends, I think is, I don't know, pretty big.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I get it, but at the same time, like, without that new release, that theater, they have nothing. They have nothing. The studio still has a movie. They still have VOD. Yeah. They still have Blu-ray. They still have places to put it to make a profit. The theater, they need that movie. Yeah. They need something to entice people to actually physically come there to watch it. So I feel like the theaters have a lot of empty threats, especially with the whole Universal thing when the Trolls World Tour or whatever it was came out. But then I would truly like to see, and they'd have to go out on a limb to try it. I would like to see what would happen if Universal, like, they put out the new Fast and Furious movie on VOD. Like, they put out their biggest movie that they have on VOD, to truly use that as this will never happen, but to use that as a test without the theaters. Yeah. Just to see how successful it would be, how much money it makes back, and to cut out all the marketing costs associated with putting that movie into the theater, with buying the posters and the marketing material and the standees, and to send the digital link out to all of the theaters, and to get rid of all of that overhead. I don't know. Wouldn't you like to see how that would go if they actually put a popular, huge blockbuster straight to VOD, just to see what the return would be on it?
I would. And you know what? I'll even go a step further. I think, and this is something that I don't know why more people don't talk about. In fact, people in my streams have mentioned it, and I've said, that's actually a really great question. Why don't you have movies that get, again, imagine this, Tenet gets marketing still, because you still need to market it. You still need to get it on TV, on YouTube, etc., to get people excited. But then you see available to own on Blu-ray, 4K, and DVD, or video on demand. And that's your initial release. Because keep that in mind. PVOD, there's still some splitting going on. The last I looked at it was that with iTunes, and I'm assuming if it's with iTunes, it was with all of them, the split for a rental is about 70-30. So the studio gets about 70%. The iTunes, the holder of it, gets around 30%. So imagine if you have a movie getting released on video on demand and on Blu-ray, 4K, DVD on the same day. And remember, with Blu-rays especially, they're getting, like, essentially, I can't quantify the profits they're getting on that when you look at the cost of how much it actually, costs to make the physical product itself and what they usually sell it for. So that's something that I would love to see them test, right? Because I think that would be interesting to see, and I think it would be easier to follow kind of the paper trail or the money behind it, right? Yeah. But what we find ourselves in right now is this position where I think the reason why is because it's never been tested, right? Movies have been straight to DVD, and that's always had a stigma, right? If you're a straight to DVD movie, that's a failure. That's a flop. That means it couldn't last
Nicolas
in
Cage.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
You're terrible. And so I think there's that stigma. And so you say the theaters have empty threats, but I don't think the studios perceive them as empty. And the reason why is because we live in a world where no one has yet tried it. And so since no one has yet tried it, the perception, and sometimes perception is reality, is that unless you get a theatrical release, you're not going to have a financially successful film.
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to like I feel like studios, they're aware that this is the future, and if ever now's the time to go this route. If you look at studios, they're all starting their own streaming services. They all want a backup plan. They all want an outlet that doesn't require a physical place to put their movie.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you can't rely, if you're a studio, you can't rely on Netflix because it's going to be a conflict of interest, right?
Yeah.
You have to have your own streaming service. So if you have your new release, you have to have our streaming service to go there and watch it. HBO has it with Warner Brothers. Universal will probably have one. And every other major studio like Sony or whatever will probably eventually have their own streaming service as an outlet to release it. And like I said, like you just said, think about this, right? Blu-rays cost what, $20 brand new?
Yeah, it depends.
Imagine if that Blu-ray release of Tenet, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't coming out 2 months after the theatrical. That Blu-ray release is the first outing of that film. That is where you have to go watch the movie right now.
Yeah.
Would you not pay $10 more for that physical copy if it wasn't already released in theaters? This is the first actual experience with it. I would pay an extra $10 for that physical copy to watch the movie at home and actually own the movie now.
Yeah.
Rather than wait 2 months for that physical copy, I would pay more. So I don't know. I wish a studio would actually just go out on a limb and try it.
Yeah. And now a huge shout out to all of my August Patreon and Subscribestar members. Starting on Patreon, Albertus Magnus, animation commentator, Brian P., David Bobrizik, Dion, Divex, Enrique Evangelista, Father Christopher Miller, Hail Father, Father Damian Cook, Frank the Tank and the Shawhan Wiener Dog Clan, Harold Francis, the Hunka Chunky Funky Monkey, Inflamed Wood, Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toon, Jonathan Carney, Kenneth Cameo, Lady T, Laura Story, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mike Jackson, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Steve Glasker, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and Tina B., my Valkyrie and Empress of the Universe. Thank you so much for supporting me on Patreon. And also, shout out to my Subscribestar peeps, Stand For, John B., Perpetual Punster, Robert Revo, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, Darkstar57, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., US 888209 Fast, Dean Heiss, Harold Francis, J-Rod the Beer Guru, Nebadon G. Adams, and ZK Man. Thank you all so very much for supporting me this month. You guys are freaking awesome. If you want your name shouted out at the end of every single video and live stream, and also if you want to have access to special perks like giveaways and an exclusive podcast that I do with fellow YouTuber John the Flick Pig Flickinger, please check out Patreon, Subscribestar, and YouTube memberships in the links below. You guys are all awesome. I love you to death. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.